Adding measurement in Fusion 360 is called dimensioning. Essentially, Fusion 360 allows you to set the distance between 2 points, the angle between 2 lines, or the radius or diameter of a circle. These are the most common dimensions we'll be using in this course. The dimension shortcut key is D. It is a good idea to deselect everything before you press the D key. You can do this by pressing the escape button. Sometimes you can also click on an empty space, but the escape button is the best way. At the moment I'm in rectangle drawing mode and it's telling me to place the first corner. It's a good idea for me to press the escape button so that nothing is selected before I press the D key now. And you can now see that I can select sketch objects to dimension. If you have other objects selected before you try to set dimensions, Fusion will assume that the object already selected is what you want to dimension. This can become quite confusing. You can see here that I've already selected these 3 vertices. If I now press the D key, you can see it's trying to figure out the angle between certain items. It's always better to press the escape key to deselect before you press the D key and then select the sketch objects that you want to dimension. If we select dimension, D for dimension, and click between 2 points, the dimension given will be the distance between those 2 points. You don't have to click and drag, you just have to select the 2 points by clicking at an instant. Once you move around, you can set whereabouts that particular dimension is going to go. If we click again, it will give us the option of typing in an exact number. In our case, we're going to round up to 64, and we're going to press enter. That dimension between here and here is now set at 64. If I click and select this item here and this item here, it will give me that same 64 down here, or I can move around and get the distance in the vertical. Alternatively, if I move around enough, I can get the direct distance between those 2 points in a straight line, otherwise known as the crow flies. If I click those and set that to, say, for example, 70, that's going to give a fairly defined idea of a rectangle, but that's not usually helpful. I can press escape to get out of dimensioning mode to select that dimension and delete it. I can also do a dimension of the radius or diameter of a circle. If I click on the outside here, you can see I'm now setting the diameter. I'm going to set the diameter of this one to 40. Notice that for a circle, it is a single click. If I want to set the angle between 2 lines, sorry about the bell going. If I want to set the angle between 2 lines, I can click on the line and click on the next line, and it will give me the angle between the two. I'm going to set this one to 60 degrees. If I want to click on the point between a point and a line, it will give me either the vertical or the horizontal distance between that line, but it won't give me anything else. Because this line is set to be up and down, it's only ever going to give me the vertical distance. I'm going to set that to be 10, and you can see the whole triangle moved over. If I just click on the dimension for a single line, it will give me the distance. You can see that I get a choice between the horizontal distance of the line between the 2 endpoints, the actual set distance of the line, or the vertical distance between the 2 points at the end of the line. And those are the most common dimensions that we will set or use. Setting the dimension, D for dimension, between 2 lines will appear as an angle, even if the line up here and the line down here are not touching. From time to time, a dimension will pop up with an error. I'll show you an example here. I'm going to click the distance for this line here and click. An error will pop up saying adding this dimension will over-constrain the stretch. Choose OK to create a driven dimension. I can either click cancel or I can click OK. If I click OK, that dimension will appear in brackets. That means it's a driven dimension. It's driven by other dimension values. And we can see here that because this is a rectangle, we know that there's a rule with rectangles that the opposite sides are equal in length. So if we set this one here, so I'm going to press escape, I'm going to double click onto this and I'm going to type in 55, you'll see that now this updates to 55. You'll also notice that this triangle moved across because it has to be 10 millimeters away from here, and this distance from here to here, all of these distances are set so that we know that. So if I keep on adding dimensions, I'm going to start creating driven dimensions. This is because you don't need these measurements, but sometimes it's good to see them, so sometimes you might want to leave that driven dimension in. Most often though, if you get that error, you hit cancel and you leave it out. One of the other reasons why you might have a driven dimension, and I'm going to draw that here, is to go line. I'm going to draw a line, triangle. And if I set this triangle, for example, using these constraints, which I will show you in more detail in the next video, to be all equal, so these lines are now all equal to each other, and I use the dimension tool to dimension this one, dimension, to be 30, and then I try and dimension this one, because, oops, that's not what I wanted to do, hit delete, press escape, press D again, that makes it nice and clean. This is a driven dimension as well. It's driven by the fact that I've told these lines that they have to be equal at all times. And as I said, we'll go into the constraints area over here in more detail later. But basically, driven measurements are not necessarily errors, it's just Fusion 360 telling you that you can't change that dimension, you need to change other dimensions in order to change that specific line or those specific points or even that angle or even that radius.